And it really is a privilege to be here. And hello, everyone, and hello to those of you who are not here in London. And I think we touched a little bit on the previous session about technology. And I'm a firm believer that with the technological advances that are going on and the connectivity across the whole globe, it can play actually a really valuable part in this agenda. So people who may be feeling very isolated, we know that in two-thirds of the population before too long are going to be connected with a mobile device. So whatever country you're living in, and if you are living in one of the 2.8 billion people where you may be tortured or even put to death for being a part of the LGBT community, if you can reach out via technology and actually feel part of a wider group, I think that can be just a fantastic thing. And I speak from a lot of personal experience about times when I didn't feel included. And while in most of my career, and I've been working for over 30 years in the insurance sector, for most of my career that would have been very much in a physical environment, I can say the social media network that we all are so tuned into these days, I think it's going to play a vital, vital part in connecting people all around the world on this topic and making you certainly feel excluded wherever you're sitting. I'm not going to talk about lots of numbers and facts and figures today. I'm here really to focus a little bit on the personal side. For me, this is a particular passion of mine. I am outwardly, I've come out. I am now labelled as being bisexual. I have to say it's not a label I sought. I didn't go out to achieve it. And throughout my life, I didn't even know that I was. So it's a really, really interesting topic. But all I can say is that, first of all, I ventured into being what I was. Well, I was a heterosexual, and for many years, I was just tackling the gender issue in the city. Because there I was with I was in the 80s, I started here in the City of London, and there were very, very few female role models. So that was sort of my challenge in my early career, was to look out and say, where are my female role models? How do I fit in to this incredibly male community? So that was my first sort of feeling of exclusion. Then I became a lesbian. And I was with a woman. I was in a very, very long-term relationship with a woman. And then I felt another type of exclusion, which was, oh my goodness, I can't be out about this. And I didn't come out for years, and I lived that secret life that so many of us lead, or have led, where it's hidden. You cover up for things, you degenderize every statement that you make. And that takes a lot of effort. And there is some analysis out there that says people are 30% less productive if they're not able to be out at work and feel included. So whatever other figures we can come up for a business case, I know for myself how it affected me for very much part of my life. So I did come out as a lesbian in 2008. And I did that because I was actually moving to a new job, and I felt I've had enough. I can't live this dual life. It's exhausting. So I did. And what I learned through that was that actually it wasn't that easy, because yes, I came out and I spoke to my team, my new team, and I was very clear with them. But I think they were so nervous about the topic, they didn't know what to say. Only 2 of my direct reports, and I think probably at that time I had about 10, only 2 of them ever asked me about my weekend or my wife. The others didn't know what to say. And I think there was an enormous, now I sort of look back, I think it was, they were fearful. They were fearful of saying the wrong thing, being made to look stupid. They didn't understand the terminology. They didn't feel comfortable just talking about it. So even though I'd come out, it was still a sort of slightly false environment I felt I was living in. But I didn't feel particularly excluded. I did feel much more included because I had been able to talk about it. But what's been absolutely fascinating for me is because now I'm back with a man. So now I've got this label of being bisexual. Now, I feel sometimes like I'm a bit of a fraud. Because how do I know? How can you be one or the other and then you change? I tell you, I'm still working through this and I'm over 50 years old and I still can't quite work it out. But I can tell you, this whole topic is entirely, it's very complicated and complex. Now, I am prepared to call myself bisexual, even though at the moment I am with a man. And all I want to do is really start talking about the topic. Because I have realized through realizing that people don't know what to say, they're nervous perhaps, they don't feel comfortable, just by starting a conversation and using words that may have made people feel uncomfortable and bringing it into the vocabulary at work, you can make a real difference. I started in this role 2 years ago, and I didn't go out to set up employee resource groups all over the place or anything like that. I just started using words. I started talking about the genders. I started using words like gay, like lesbian, like bisexual, like transgender. And first of all, these people were looking at me saying, wow, this woman, I mean, gosh, where's she come from? But what's happened is that it's empowered people in the corporate centre to talk about it. They feel much more comfortable, and they started their own employee resource groups. They felt they had the authority to blog about it, to run events about it. And I didn't go, there was no CEO edict, set these up, go and do this. It's just happening because I've started a whole conversation about it. And that's why I believe the role model aspect to be so important. And it takes courage. I tell you, most weeks I still need the courage to talk about it. I have to sort of urge myself to continue. It's really, really tough in a business world. But I so believe it's the right thing to do to make everything, to make the workplace truly, truly inclusive. Now, I didn't want to just talk about me, because I could talk about me for a long time. I wanted to actually share a few experiences of some other people who work in the insurance sector here in London. So I had took the liberty of talking to a few people, and I just want to talk here about one story. I'm going to share a few stories, but I'm going to start with Samantha's story. This is the story of Samantha, a transgender woman. And she has a very inspiring story, and I'm going to actually read it because I want it to come out in her words. So I started my journey of discovery as a boy, although in my mind I was always female. This was my reality. However, it wasn't recognized by my primary school or parents, who tried to convince me I was male. So I adopted that role. But this act never displaced my belief in my true identity. I played the part which made everyone else happy except me. I arrived at the end of my 5th form in high school with O-levels taken and A-levels chosen. Believing my path fairly well mapped out, I'd planned to pursue a path within science at university. But life doesn't always work out the way you plan. Due to a series of circumstances, I actually left school at 16 with 9 O-levels and took a 4-year engineering apprenticeship with the Central Electricity Generation Board. Once I was qualified, my career took another turn, and I transferred my skill set to the offshore industry. During my 23-year offshore industry career, I fulfilled a number of positions, culminating as an offshore installation manager. I had my very own oil platform to look after, with a crew of over 200 people to manage, 99% of them male. Well, if I was going to play a part, I was going to play it well, and yet my true self never disappeared throughout that time. By the time I was 35, my thoughts turned more and more introspective. As I preached a doctrine of authenticity, honesty, and openness to my staff, I began to question my own life. The offshore work rotation of 2 weeks on, 3 weeks off allowed me the freedom to express myself during my leave. So, with the internet and groups set up by other trans people, I discovered myself, lived as myself, comfortable with my support network. But I was still hidden from everyday life. Now, over a period of time, the lines started to blur, and I found it difficult and unmanageable to live two lives, always wishing I could just be me full-time. That was when destiny intervened. In the mid-2000s, I had an iPhone and a Facebook account, all in my female persona, and I gave my mobile number to close contacts at work. What I didn't realize was during a software update, Apple thought it would be a good idea to link your Facebook page, including your photograph, to your phone number. This meant that when I called a friend who also had an iPhone and Facebook account, your photo and the link to your page was automatically added to their phone. So, fortunately, the friend who told me about this was and still is a very dear work colleague and close friend who I looked up to and I wished I could be just like. She gave me lots of confidence and support along with our close circle of friends, which also included the HR director of the company I worked for at the time. And together with the support of these wonderful people, I gained the strength through sort of being outed to finally step out of the shadows, shake off the guilt and do the transition. With the security provided by the safety net of my friends, I knew I was not going to lose everything. I could now stand proud and say I am a woman. Always have been, always will be. I can honestly say that it was like a tremendous weight had been removed from my shoulders. I found myself engaged, enthusiastic, and much more productive, through no longer having to waste energy hiding who I was. Rather than reject me, and I had convinced myself this would happen, people supported. They politely asked questions and just got on with it. The only comment I ever got was, that explains everything. So perhaps my well-constructed facade wasn't as good as I had believed. So where am I now? I left the offshore industry in December 2014 to join the insurance industry and now working at Marsh in the global energy risk engineering team, traveling the globe, visiting various offshore installations. So wonderful story of someone who's now working in our sector. And she learned that authenticity, communication, education, the support you get, friendship, and visibility are incredibly important. And that our worst enemy often is our little voice in our head saying, you can't do this. So we can, and Samantha is proof that you can, even on an offshore oil rig. So I think that's really, truly inspirational. And I therefore wanted to speak to a few other people. So I reached out. First of all, I reached out to an out gay employee in Lloyd's. And he said, for me, Lloyd's is a place where it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, or where you have come from. If you're the right person for the job, we want you to work for us. People don't realize what it means to be a minority, but actually in organizations like Lloyd's, you are not a minority, you are just one of many. But at the same time, with your own individuality. Now, if I've managed to create that environment in the 2 years, I can feel very proud of what we're doing in terms of changing things, certainly in Lloyd's, but also in the insurance market. Now, one of the other themes that has come out is about accepting and owning your own identity. So I've got a great story about somebody else who was a former professional ballet dancer, turned insurance professional. His name is Eric. He trained to be a professional ballet dancer from a young age and spent 2 years dancing for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet in Canada. That career ended abruptly, injury, a very tough and unforgiving career to be a ballet dancer. And that meant that Eric ended up studying business and insurance, which brought him over to London, where he is now, and he's working as the business development manager at a global insurance provider, Allied World. Now, Eric is one of those fantastic people who has incredible self-confidence, and he completely owns who he is. He knows what he wants in life, and he is therefore a role model in himself. But he did tell me about an experience he had at university when he was applying for graduate jobs. The one he really wanted was with Marsh, the broker. So he spoke to a career advisor about it, who advised Eric of her concern around the diversity of his extracurricular activities on his CV. Her main concern was that dancing was the primary interest, suggesting that he should probably add hockey to enhance his prospects. So anyway, Eric called her out and said, "Are you worried about the dancing stuff, or are you worried that I might be gay?" She was worried about him being different from the hockey-playing counterparts that who would be looking to recruit him, and that it would be very hard for him to find a job. But there's a good ending here. He did not heed her advice. He did not put hockey on his CV, and he did not remove dancing, and he did get the job. And he is one of those people who will not put up with discrimination in the workplace. He is challenging it. He's part of the movement, if you like to call it, that we have within the Lloyd's market to make a difference. And I really appreciate him being there as one of those role models. Now, the other thing that came out was the importance of having support networks. And I spoke to another friend of mine in the industry. He's James Mee. He is the head of corporate insurance and financial services at a leading city law firm, RPC. And he spoke about how things really are changing, and I believe they are. And he said how encouraging it is to see young people coming in from university as trainees who are openly gay these days and trying not to hide it. He said to me, seeing these young people bring their whole selves to work and be authentic from the very start of their career shows how far we have come. Their energy and enthusiasm, which naturally comes from an open and accepting work environment, is fantastic, and it benefits us all. However, we know it's not all rosy. We know that there's been some research, HRC research, that revealed that 62% of graduates go back into the closet when they move from university to employment. Isn't that amazing? And there are a few examples here as to why that might happen. One young insurance professional commented that when she first started out in her career, she purposefully tried to refrain from saying anything about her sexual orientation in the workplace. Why? It wasn't because she expected, interestingly enough, and this could be a generation thing, a discriminative reaction. It was because she wanted to be employed for her experience, success, and potential, and not just to increase the diversity pool. Wow. Now, as a woman, you aren't able to disguise that if you want to not be counted as a female to help gender diversity, but she actually wanted to stay in the closet so that she didn't count towards a diversity metric. Fascinating. Another young professional spoke about how, although he had never experienced any direct discrimination, he had noticed some people in his workplace looking visibly uncomfortable at any moment he spoke of something considered gay. So he is then feeling, wow, I thought it was okay to be out at work. Now I'm here, I'm not feeling so comfortable. So it's a frightening thought that these people joining the workforce these days might actually be going back into the closet because of practices and behaviours by colleagues all around them in their workplace. But I believe really for business it boils down to one thing. If you value talent, and we all say we value talent. We're all talking about people being one of our most important assets. That means we need to value all types of people. And understanding from my own personal experience how it can genuinely affect your productivity and how engaged you are at work, I would encourage everybody to start moving very, very, very rapidly in making sure that you've got an incredibly inclusive workplace, particularly for the LGBT community. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. That was terrific, fascinating. I'm sure there are some questions, and I think we have time for a couple. Are there any from the audience? Yes, right here. There's a microphone coming right behind you.
Hi, my name is Timur, and I'm from BP. So thank you for that. I mean, that was very inspiring. And all morning I've been inspired, but also at the same time, I think we're talking a lot about our people. We're talking a lot about our talent and actually all the good policies, practices that we've all put in place. I think what I'm interested in is actually how do we make it more tangible? And actually, when we say talent management for LGBT people, what do we actually mean? I mean, we've talked about the fact that there's no data, and so actually it's quite difficult to measure and progress people, etc. When do we actually start to have those difficult conversations and tackle those difficult topics to say, actually, we need to do what we did for gender. We need, all the good work that's been done there, actually, we should learn from it and we should replicate it and do it faster. So we don't have to wait another 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. So, of course, what we all probably want is it not to be a topic at all. Well, it shouldn't be a topic soon. This is what we're hoping for. Often I speak on the gender diversity topic, and I feel exactly the same. I don't want it to be a topic of conversation soon. And that's really what we should be aiming for. Quite how we get there, I certainly don't have all of the answers. But we touched on, or the previous panel touched on the allies a lot, talking about that. We spend a lot of time trying to engage with people who just don't understand the topic. We are celebrating diversity. We launched our Dive-In Festival last year. It was a week-long festival. It was celebrating diversity. We did a lot of unconscious bias training sessions. We put them on for free for people, come along. Unfortunately, the sessions that were focused on women, 90% of the audience were women. We didn't tick people off for the LGBT sessions, so we don't know how many of them felt LGBT, part of the LGBT community, but probably a similar-ish percentage were. And that's one of the issues. People were talking about it. They didn't feel that they belonged. So the guy didn't want to go to the women's thing. He didn't even think he would feel included. So we've got this really difficult topic to tackle, where no one's feeling that they feel they can talk about it, they belong to that. I honestly think it's the conversations that just have to keep on and on and on until we get to a stage where it's just not a topic at all.
Yes, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Graham Sparks with Shell. We saw from the Economist Intelligence Unit data earlier that I think it said that 63% say senior executive CEOs being out and visible really matters. So I'm wondering, from your experience, what can companies do to perhaps create that environment, or perhaps to personalise it, what would have made it easier for you over the years?
Yeah, so they 63%, sorry, can you just repeat the statistic?
It was 63% say that senior executives need to lead on this, and there was a piece also about senior people being out.
Yes. Well, I mean, it definitely needs to be absolutely coming from the top, but also what I'm finding from the bottom as well. But without a shadow of a doubt, leaders have got to, but they've got to mean it. And I think this is one of the things we're sort of being confronted with, and is the words, the corporate blah blah, the doing it for your customers' benefit and all of this. And I know that years ago, for instance, before I was LGBT and I was I remember going in and being a bit, strident when I was much younger, and sort of looking at, you'd look at the marketing material of something, and they would have all the diverse faces on there. And then, of course, I would go straight to the board of directors and look how diverse the board of directors were. And if it wasn't, I knew it was just corporate, blah, blah. So there are things we can do, and that's why it is so important. But it really is so important for the leadership to talk about it, but really to mean it, to really mean it. But I tell you, there's nothing like having the dialogue and then people admitting, oh, well, my son's gay. This sort of thing. I mean, we've seen it again on the gender side. The number of women, daughters, who are now coming into the workplace, and the fathers are saying, we've got to change this world for these women. This is my daughter now being affected. And the more people talk about it and the more people come out, even about their relations and their family and all of that, the more I think that'll make an impact. And it'll make the senior leaders be genuine about it.
Inga, thank you so much. We could have gone on for a long time, but lunch beckons. That was a terrific presentation, really inspirational. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.